Hello everyone, Chris here. Welcome back once again. You're new to the channel. You're very welcome. Spread the word, please. This is where we speak about my books. I've written many books, more than 5,000. And of course, when you write a book, there's a whole bunch of things which happens inside the book. And there's a lot of backroom work being done as well. You know, you don't just write a book. You either have a knowledge or you obtain the knowledge or both. So today we want to speak about a book written under a pseudonym. There's 54 of them as far as I know. There might be more by the time which you listen here. And this is the one called Codename Castleberry. I actually have a copy here. It's a fairly substantial book. It's almost 500 pages. And it's a fascinating book. But before we start with it, people have been asking me what's lying there, what's lying here on the table right next to me. Well, actually, it's two little pocket Bibles. This is the one which I got in my service in the police. Before you would go on active duty somewhere, they would, on a parade, they would tell you can come and fetch a little Bible, which is donated to you. There's a nice inscription on the inside to say that this was given by the Bible Society of South Africa for your active service. I'm translating because it's in Afrikaans. And this little Bible went with me for, quite a few trips. Many people actually collected them, so every time you went, you could get another one. But they would ask us not to do that. Just take a Bible for the first time. And or if you need another one because perhaps you forgot, that happened too. I remember we arrived at Transito. That is where it was a bit different in the police. When you go to the borders, which might be South Africa, it might be Angola, Angolan border. But that was before my time, actually. The police got called, withdrawn from there, more to focus on internal security situations. But it doesn't matter. You were still in your camouflage uniform, but you would be doing a lot more counter-terrorism than counterinsurgency, which is completely not the same thing. But we developed it into one, which is probably unique to us. But anyway, I remember once, because people come from all across South Africa, you know, if you annoyed your colonel or your warrant officer at a small station somewhere, and same as a sergeant major in the army, well, then they want volunteers to go to these border duty trips, which is a couple of months, 3 months, 4 months, sometimes a bit less. I know about one guy who spent about 7 months, but that was in Rhodesia because he they went to exchange with platoons on at some airport or airfield. So the new guys would get off, and of course the camouflage uniform is brand new, and the guys coming out of the bush would be very faded. It's a sign of honor. It's like a badge of honor. So anyway, this guy then, for some reason, even though he completed his 3 or 4 months in Rhodesia, that day he put his new camouflage uniform on instead of his old faded ones. And as he walked across, he saw, well, here's some mates of mine, and he stopped and talked to them, and they thought he was coming with them to this trip, you know, because really people come from all over the country. It's not like the army where you train together, go to the war together, and come back together. Not at all. You have different units sending different men. That's actually what made the police so very effective. Is because, in the first place, they were older, they were much harder, much more experienced to life. And then secondly, they would have different skills. You know, you would have a detective there, you would have a dark unit member, you have someone from the flying squad, you might have, you know, guys who specializes in whatever. So you have different skills. It's not uniform. Yes, they have all the uniform skills to do counterinsurgency, or they wouldn't be there. But But when you combine those different skill sets, then you have something really, really bad for a terrorist, because, especially in counterterrorism, because we might not know why he's lying to us, this fellow we're talking to, but we do know, because we can read his body language and we get an instinct. You get like a basic, uh, like a sixth instinct. That's what you get. You know this guy's lying to you. There's something about him which bothers you, and then you can, of course, do a normal police work. And that's how we caught a lot of them. There were other ways and means too. But this guy, anyway, he got mixed up with a group who was coming in, and when he left, he said, "Guys, I got to go. I'm done with my tour. I want to leave now." They thought he was making a joke of rather bad taste, and so they handcuffed him and just dragged him with him. and so, and so when the original aircraft with the original guys arrived at Pretoria, they realized this guy's missing. And then they got a radio signal, no, he's still there. And the general said, well, in that case, well, let him stay there for another few months. So I know about that happening. Lots of funny things actually happened there. I write about it in my other books, the Mean Streets Police books, as well as Gewetenlose Strate, the Afrikaans one. But anyway, you get a little Bible like this, and I still have mine. This is not the original one. The first original one I actually shot. I heard a rumor that this will stop an R1 rifle bullet, 7.62 NATO, and I didn't believe it, and so I decided I'm going to test it. So I shot, and I wouldn't do these things today, but it was for survival reasons, because we had no body armor or anything like that. It's too heavy and too warm in Africa anyway, and so so I shot the Bible like this, and I shot right through it. But I'm not denying that there are times when the Bibles actually did stop bullets. It happened. I know about at least 2 confirmed cases. I'm trying to get them to speak to me on Legacy. That's the other channel. Again, guys, if you know Legacy and you've listened to our videos before, forgive me when I repeat myself. I have no choice. I don't know who's new here and who have no clue what I'm talking about when I say Legacy. As you can see here on the side, Legacy Conversations, that's our main channel. And it's a lot bigger than this one. I mean, there is thousands and thousands of people. And yeah, it's a fascinating channel, but because I was based in Switzerland, which I call Swineland. There's even a video out on the police state of Switzerland. And for me, we actually lived in the place and experienced it. I think I know more about it than you will. Probably just traveled through it. You haven't seen the swine or the Swiss in their natural element, which is really horrible people. I don't like them at all. I have no time for them whatsoever. And 3 years I spent there, and I have lots of reasons why I say these nasty things, and it's in some of my books as well. I expose them. I mean, we know, for instance, when I wrote together with my wife, Rebecca, during the horrible illness, which name we can't even mention because we'll be banned. We wrote 2 books about the Jewish army who were rescuing people in occupied France in 1942-43, around about there. It's one of those unknown history things. I've spoken to Israeli army officers who don't even know about it. But they were definitely there, and I did the research. I've heard about them. In fact, I knew one of them. And so there it came out that the Jewish army, this is long before Israel, it's got nothing to do with the Israeli army, right? And so they would actually infiltrate together with the secret operation forces of the Allies. They would go in and they would rescue Jews. And that's what they did, and they rescued a huge amount of them, actually. It's fantastic. But then it came out that Switzerland, Swineland, you know, a place where the swine lives. They don't get that joke, by the way. One said to me, he might be a donkey, but he's not a swine. It's a joke, man. You won't get it. You're Swiss. You won't get it. I mean, they only laugh when they are drunk, you know. Unless they're drunk, you don't see them smiling. Well, or where they, of course, wash money, launder money for terrorism or things like that. But anyway, so we found out there were about 27,000 to 50,000 Jews who couldn't get through the border simply because their passports and paperwork weren't perfectly right. And so the swine, of course, chased them away. And of course, they died. Yeah, all of them. Yeah, they died. And the swine will tell you they're very proud of the fact that they took many Jews in. And in fact, they did. But you go, guess what? If you read or look at the movie made by that New York doctor, female doctor, she always talks about sex and problems you have. Ask Dr. Roof. Dr. Roof. She was also there. Her parents died, and then she ended up in Switzerland. Guess what? They refused. The swine that is, they refused to have her go to school. Yeah, because she's female, she should work in the fields or in the barefoot in the kitchen, preferably pregnant, but the Swiss men are small, very small. And small men are small everywhere, I'm afraid. They ain't Jewish, man. They ain't African. Yeah, what can I say? They have no manhood. If you walk up to him and you look like you want to take him, he runs. He's that scared. They only fight amongst themselves when they're drunk once again. It's a nation I despise, actually. And if you don't like my comments, man, I don't care. I lived there. I know them. I've been there. And go look at that video which I made about them. You'll be shocked. I mean, and what's even more shocking is how many people actually supported me who said, Chris, we lived there as well, man, or we were there for whatever reason, and we were treated the same as you were treated. So I'm very tempted here at the guest house in Phuket once we open to put up a sign, like you found in the old days, no dogs and Englishmen allowed. I'll just put it, no dogs and Swiss people allowed. And then I thought to myself, no, man, that goes too far. Let's not go that route. Just charge them 5 times more. Make life hard for them. It is fascinating whenever you find them outside their country, they're very friendly. Why? Because they sort of realize what's going to happen to them if they have a normal Swiss swine manners outside their country. They're going to get blitzed. That's an Afrikaans word for being taken to task behind the woodshed. Remember when old Joe Biden wanted to do that with Trump? Here we have 2 presidents. Both of them dodged Vietnam. One had asthma. That is Biden. And the other one had bone spurs in his feet. That's Trump. Yeah. And before them we had what? George Bush. He was actually a pilot. His daddy arranged that in the National Guard. But he never went. Wait, sure he didn't go. And before him, Billy Goat Clinton. As I call him in the books, Billy Goat. Now that's one man you never leave alone with your wife in a room. And he still have to explain to us what happened at this beautiful island of Epstein. But we'll never hear from that. You forget it. We're not going to hear it. But it's very fascinating. He's the only president in history which I know about in any country who would actually leave his security detail behind. And then he goes on these trips. So they say. But I'm sure if ever it comes out, there will be a bit of explaining to do. But you know what? I don't care. But he didn't go to Vietnam either. You know why not? He went to Oxford. Very, very bright guy. Rhodes Scholar or something. And in Oxford, apparently, he smoked weed. But he said he never inhaled it. Yeah. And then later, when he wasn't president anymore, he came out, he did actually inhale. Of course he did. This is a type of caliber of people, It is fascinating. But let's get back to the Bibles. So the blue one is what we got in the police because our normal uniform, when we're not wearing camouflage, is blue. And then I have this one as well, which somebody must have given to me. This is given by the Gideons. They gave this one out. It also says for your active duty, thank you for your active duty. May this assist you. I'll tell you this from a South African military, even to this very day, and thereby I include the South African police force, where I come from. We were decent Christian people. We were fighting communism. We were not fighting for apartheid. really not. In the army and the police, we were integrated mostly. And we knew it was stupid laws. But I don't want to go into that. Let's talk about Codename Castleberry. Castleberry, in the first place, I really like the cover. I don't know if you guys like this cover as well. This is really a great cover. It was designed for me by one of my friends, Elsa. She's been on Legacy Conversations. Let me just finish explaining about Legacy Conversations. When I was in Swineland, I got a message like a dream one day, one night. The dream said to me, go and talk to the army. I really believe it came from our Lord, from God. So I'm a deeply religious man, Seventh-day Adventist, and I'm proud of it. I'm not going to change. There's nothing in this world which will make me change. It is the biggest Protestant church in the world, by the way. There's 22 million of us, and probably 100 million will is not members, but they certainly believe what we say because it's straight out of the Bible. You can't argue with it. But I'm not here to talk about that. When I talk about the other book, Oath of Evil, I might go a little bit more into that. But I was there in Switzerland, and I wasn't happy there. I can tell you now, if you like me and you grew up in a place which is semi-desert and is flat, like Namibia, and you go to a mountain place like Swineland, yeah, those forests filled with cigarette butts, it's not clean there. And the snow and high mountains, you know what, for me that sucks. It's not even pretty. But even if it was pretty, and it might be pretty, God made it, not you swine. Remember that. And if you really want a good holiday in the Alps, go to the French Alps where you find decent people. Go to the Italian Alps, man. Fantastic people. We're going to love you. Austria, no. We knew how Austria reacted during the terrible illness. We know what rules and things were implemented. So, you know what? No, we don't support you. No, don't think so. But anyway, anything is better than Swineland. And I remember when I got the dream, I was quite excited because I could do it. I had relatively fast internet, very slow for what we have here in Thailand and in the East. But bigger, better than South Africa anyway. And so I was excited. I could do this. I had a new laptop. I had time. But I said, my Lord, I hear what you say, but I'm from the police, and we don't really like each other. The police and the army, there's a bit of a feeling here. We don't like each other. And it's traditional, it's esprit de corps. There's nothing wrong with that, but some of the people don't really understand the police, and we definitely didn't rate the army that highly. Again, it's esprit de corps. I must tell you, we were very grateful for the army. They was an army. We were not. We were light infantry. Without support weapons, we had to rely on the Air Force and the army to support. But to make a long story short, we started speaking, and now it's about 4 years later. We had 4 million views, and we had almost 1 million hours, and we made 947 videos. So if you're interested in listening to the veteran speaking, and you should be, because a lot of the things we talk about and write about in the GMJ books are also discussed there. What I always say to you is fascinating because the books were mostly written before Legacy Conversation came into being. And it is fascinating how what we talk there is already set in the books. So basically the Legacy Conversation started confirming the books. And that to me was just fantastic. And I would sit there sometimes with a grin, or there was a bit of wink going on, because many of the people, especially Special Forces I knew before, we actually recorded them. Many of them were still are very, very good friends of mine. We worked together on other matters. So anyway, codename Castleberry then follows up on codename Wrangler, which I spoke about before, I think. Now, Wrangler is all about rescuing hostages from an aircraft. And it's a fascinating story, that one too, almost 500 pages, because we go, like all GMJ books, we go deep into detail. If we write a book like that, which is about aircraft hostage rescue, you can take for granted we're going to look at what happened in the past. And when books start looking in history, or they start talking from the Bible, or they start talking of tradecraft or spycraft or weapon systems, it's all 100% correct. And most of the books are based upon training scenarios, or they are based upon things which happened, disguised, of course. So they are fiction. Those who say they're fiction, of course. But there's a large amount of truth behind that fiction, if you understand what I mean. Because it's not always possible to reveal certain things as non-fiction, because you don't want to to betray trust or make sure that the terrorists gain some knowledge from your books or your videos. So you would rather disguise it, and that's of course what I did. But that's not the same as saying that some people went out and had to look at it first and approve it, like happens in the US. If you write any type of book there from a military viewpoint or your ex-special forces, you have to hand it in. They will edit it for you, which means they will suppress all the juicy bits, blah, blah, blah. And if you don't do it, they will come after you. We saw what happened to the guys who claimed to have shot Bin Laden. I don't know if they did or didn't. I believe him. But we all know that the books, they are not really, it's for me, that takes away a little bit of its value when you have to hand it in for approval. But I do understand and agree that it should be done. There are certain things you shouldn't reveal. So I always have like senior former intelligence officials who will look at the books before you see it. Sometimes in the books you'll see there's notes next to it. One of the characters, Angelique, the main character, you would see in the books, she would make her own comments. And it's normally quite funny when she gets involved, because he reads the manuscript obviously before you do. And sometimes we leave those comments in. So it explains a bit more. Well, I'm sure you know what I mean. So in Wrangler, we looked at the failures. We looked at where things didn't work out, like Operation Eagle Claw. Well, at least you learned from it. That's a good thing. That's a great thing. But the operation itself was man, it was really badly done, badly executed. But we also look at Entebbe, and we look at Mogadishu, where West German Special Forces rescued an aircraft. Sometimes with these things you win and sometimes you lose. But this book, Castleberry, this one actually follows right after that book. And that's the thing about the James A books, is they follow on each other. It's not to say you need to read all of them. I don't think anybody ever read all of them except me. But you don't need to. Each is a story on its own. That's what I'm trying to say to you. It's a complete story on its own, but the story continues in the bigger picture, if you understand what I mean. The missions just come one after the other. Now, there's always a story behind the story. So what I was trying to explain to you in this book are two things. The first thing is that you can actually use your spies, which is already inside the country, to assist. The scenario here is as follows. There's an African country, I think it's the island of Zanzibar or somewhere. Beautiful place, but don't go there. There's a bit of Muslim extremism going on there, or used to anyway, and they had this thing, they would take acid, and then you walk there with your bikini, madam. I'm sure you have a body for the bikini as well, even though you're 70 or 80 years old. You'd be surprised the things we see here at Patong Beach in Thailand and Phuket, where I now live. Man, some of them just haven't looked in a mirror for 40 years. But anyway, so they would take the acid and they would just throw this acid in the Christian woman's face and chest area, of course. That has happened quite a few times. Zanzibar is also a place which is known as having the shortest war ever in the history of warfare. I think it lasted 38 minutes. Yeah, minutes, not days. That is when the Sultan or Zanzibar or something declared war against England, the British Empire. We then arrived with one of their warships, gunboats, gunboat diplomacy, used to work. But it only works if you actually have something behind you, as Donald Trump is finding out. And then they started shelling the place. These guys returned fire with a 200-year-old cannon, which was made, I think, in 1510 or something. But whatever. So they surrendered after about, I think, 38 minutes. It was the shortest war in history. But the scenario was that there was, like civil unrest, and there's a whole bunch of diplomats and tourists and things are trapped, and they have to be rescued. And of course, this is now far away from where you would normally find a carrier or something, or the Marines are not close by to go in. And so the question arises, is it possible for the spies probably or possibly to go and assist, to see if you can get these people into a place of safety? It won't be a safe house. It will not betray a safe house for you. You can rather die. I don't care. And I will never, ever, and it's in the book as well, will never, ever break a spy network to assist you. Never going to happen. Those guys are very permanently. They observe. They don't do anything else. But if you have like a team in the country already, and there are many of these teams around, based upon the Special Activity Division of the CIA, which most of you know, we think not much of them. We think they're low standards. And if you read Codename Crocodile, I think that's book 53. It's called after my mother-in-law, who's Swiss, by the way. But I love the dear woman. She's very nice. Probably the only nice one there in entire Switzerland. But, the old joke, crocodile, mother-in-law. Okay. If you don't understand the joke, that's good too. She didn't. But she made peace with it. All the codename books have, the names are actually a bit of a joke, and it refers to something like Castleberry itself, would refer to where my late wife, Missa, where she was living when I met her. She was in, I believe, Castleberry, which is in Florida, USA, not Johannesburg. So, but there we look at the different units which are found in the books. People often ask me, do they really exist? The answer is yes, but they denied. In the sense that you won't find them on paper. You will not, definitely, if you go and you ask too many questions, people will take note of you, and you might have some trouble afterwards. But again, if you listen to legacy conversations, here and there, some special forces officers actually mention something which, if you've read the books, you would immediately know what that guy is talking about. But I'm not revealing a lot more than that. But let us say there are such units, even if denied. And let us say there is such a unit, as it happens, right inside Zanzibar at that moment, doing other things. But they are available and they can do something. It might also be Tanzania. I'm not even sure whether it's Zanzibar or Tanzania. I wrote a book a few years ago. Anyway, there's civil unrest. They've got these people into a place of safety, and now they have to be rescued. So the normal way of doing it, I suppose, is you would send a warship and use your helicopters, or you would, if you have a carrier group close by, same story. If you have like a marine landing ship or something, you can storm the beaches. Lots of things you can do, but it takes time. It takes time. You can also, of course, parachute, guys in to secure the airport, and then just come in with your aircraft and load these people, but you still need to get into that airport. It's not like Vietnam, when the US ran away in 1975. These Americans and sympathizers actually had to make their way towards the embassy and also to the CIA headquarters. That's actually where you see the helicopter, the Huey, standing, and you have that line of people going up. That was at the CIA headquarters, and guess what? They left all their documents there. Yeah, they did that. You can tell me you didn't know that Soviet was going to fall. You were that stupid. And you ran away that quickly that you left all your files. And guess what happened? Yes, the communists came, they read your files. These people spent the next 20 years in camps of re-education. Well, where were you at that stage? Oh yeah, of course. I was back in the US. I was now assigned to Angola. So you came to Angola and you spoke to the South Africans, get them to invade. Yeah, it was called Op Savannah. But you know what? Uh, the South African intelligence officers were looking at you and thinking privately, man, you're stupid. You have got no clue what you're talking about. You don't know this area. You were sitting there and say, this is the good guys, this is the bad guys. But you couldn't say why. And you couldn't say what is the good guys and what is the bad guys. And you had no flippant clue. And guess what? We are making on Legacy, we're making episodes with those people who actually will tell you the truth about the CIA and Op Savannah. I'm really looking forward to that. We haven't made it yet, but we will. But we will. Fact of the matter is, in Africa, it's not always possible to use the normal methods, simply because things can explode overnight. It's not like in South Vietnam with the fall of Saigon, where any idiot could have told you it's going to happen within a few days or weeks, and you should have burned your files, but you didn't. And guess what? Wherever you run away, this is the US Army now and NATO. You do the same thing. You've learned nothing, which is why the African tribal chiefs, whenever you come there, they're very nice to you, but in private they say, I don't think we should help these people too far. Let's help them, but let's talk to the enemy as well. And just explain to them we're playing tricks on these guys. We're actually with you guys. But, you see how history, it's the same when Billy Goat Clinton, when you ran away from Mogadishu, where you achieved what? Exactly nothing. And then you got ambushed there, and a fantastic movie was made, and the book, it was great. Like this, you lost. You lost. It was failure. Doesn't matter how many you killed. For every single one you killed, which were innocent, and most of them were probably, you created more terrorism. Has anything changed there? No. But when you ran away, when Billy Goat withdrew you, and I actually listened to the conversations of these people talking to each other, they were saying, okay, we can defeat the great Satan. That's you, the US. And I'm not, it's not me saying it. Okay, I don't think you're the great Satan. And I do think you're the second beast of the Bible, of the books of Daniel and Revelation. I'm not the only one who says that. Every single Protestant leader from Martin Luther onward said it's you. So, well, Luther, of course, he died before you got created, but he said it must be created soon. And, well, read Oath of Evil and other books, and you will find out why we're saying these things, and then we understand why you're acting the way you do. But these jihadis and others, your enemies, were saying, well, we can defeat you. We just need to not be wiped out. That's all we need. We need to get you to kill many of us, as many as you can, because when we create sympathy for our movement, what our cause is, and that's working brilliantly. And if we kill you long enough, you will run. You will run. Since when? Iraq, Afghanistan. Fascinating thing, Afghanistan. You know when that bomb exploded there at the airport? And I think 12 US Marines died, including female members. May they rest in peace. Perhaps their parents and surviving spouses should actually ask why they were there in the first place. You know, it's an unnecessary war you started. But then what happened is they started shooting. Yeah, they killed, I think, 207 people, didn't they? Why? Because of panic shooting. Just shooting into the crowds. Wow, where in your life have you heard about that? No fire discipline. Nothing. And then you drowned a guy who was actually delivering water somewhere. And you try to lie about that as well. You know, when I wrote that book, Voices, War Crimes USA, I said in my lecture where I said, yeah, it's a 500-page book, but I could have made it 2,000. Because the information is out there. You just don't want to see it. Panic shooting. And that's what we expect from you. So it's better for you not to try and rescue people out of Africa because you're going to slaughter whatever is in front of you. Because you have no fire discipline. You've got nothing no responsibility because you'll get away with it. We don't want you here, to be honest. You're not welcome in my world. But anyway, I'm saying these things to warn you. I'm not saying it to annoy you, but if you get annoyed, I don't care. It's true. Nothing but the truth. Since you got involved in terrorism in sub-Saharan Africa, oh, by the way, it went up about 20-fold. Why? Because you kill the wrong people, because you don't know what you're doing. You're not good enough to operate in sub-Saharan Africa. You just screw up. Go home. It's my advice. Please, just leave. Go home. We'll sort our own problems out. We don't need you. This is what happened to France now when they got chased out of the Sahel, out of West Africa. Why? Because even there, Germany was also involved there. The German armed forces, they found out two things. They attack helicopters, the Tigray or something like that, Tiger. It cannot fly there. It's too warm. Sorry that I'm laughing. And then the same with their actual assault rifles. It didn't work. Why not? Oh, it's too warm. It's too warm. And then, yes, it's warm here. It's about 53 degrees in the shade. There ain't no shade. But I have to ask Germany, why are you there? Why are you outside your country's borders? Have you not had enough problems in the last 100 years? Were you not destroyed twice for your military adventures? Anyway. So in this book, the scenario is that this riot has broken out. The spy teams, let's call them the assassins. That's what they were known as in my time. One of the assassin teams has gone in. They grab these people, they're keeping them safe, but they need to be rescued now. They need something to come in and fetch them. So Angelique was the main character in the book and the one in command. She's a commander. She's the head of counter-terrorism, later counter-espionage. She's got a couple of men helping her. One is called Foxtrot, who later becomes her husband because he and she have a history together. Even though they're not really showing it, he exists as a bodyguard. He tries to protect her because Angelique, and the real Angelique upon which the character is based, was the same. Extremely dangerous woman, extremely beautiful woman, and extremely hard-headed. You had to, I wouldn't use the word beg, but you had to speak to her. You had to say, Angelique, let's think about this. And Angelique, you're a senior officer. You shouldn't be doing this. You're a spy master. Go back to your office. Go and run your operations across Africa. Why are you here in the field? Let us do the work. This is our level, not yours. But then Angelique is not the woman who's going to listen to that, but she will listen to reason. And there's always something going on with her anyway, as I say in all the books, videos. I mean, she does have secrets which comes out in the first book written, but which is actually only one of the last books in time-wise, codename VFO 565. Where it comes out, she's actually a double spy. She's working for France as well. I'm not betraying the books by saying this to you. If you have two IQs in your brain, and you will have a lot more of that to read these books or you won't understand them, then you would have figured that out anyway. Okay, Angelique is on her way back to South Africa by way of ship after she rescued the people on codename Wrangler. And she got the message and she says, okay, we have to go in and rescue these people. And she knows back there in Madagascar, there's an old C-130 aircraft, military cargo aircraft standing. It's actually an L-100. So it's a civilian version of a C-130, but they are so close to each other, it doesn't really matter. And she knows it's standing there because she, in the previous mission, codename Wrangler, that's the aircraft they stormed. And so it's got a couple of bullet holes in it. It's probably old. It's not in a perfect condition, but she can fly. She has many skills, and she's a superb pilot. She can fly many different aircraft. The real one, by the way, could do it too. And the emphasis also of the real ones were that they were all trained in civilian parachuting, not so much military. There's reasons. If you read Codename Crocodile, you will absolutely understand why. But anyway, so they go back to that place and they grab this aircraft, basically confiscate it, check it, says, well, it's not in a good condition, but it's a short flight. Let's just hop over to Zanzibar, land, get these people out. That's what the book is about. Now, the problem comes when they land and they realize their brake system ain't working as it should. Now, that's not a major problem. I mean, if your runway is long enough, you can do something, but then they decide to do something remarkable. And if you go on the internet, you will find examples of this. They decide they're going to break this C-130, which is a big aircraft. They're going to break it with parachutes. Like you would do with a fighter aircraft. It comes a little parachute out at the back. But of course, this thing is not designed to do that. But they fasten the parachutes onto the deck, onto the floor, and you would have 4 of the operators standing at the back, and they just throw the parachutes out of a drogue chute, and they deploy and they help slow it down. Can it be done? Absolutely, yes. The US Marines, aviators, they actually did that. Go on the online, look for it. You will see they deploy this massive cargo chutes, and they stop that aircraft quickly, very quickly. In fact, during codename Wrangler, the plan was to land with these C-130s inside a soccer stadium in Tehran. Inside. I need that, not in a parking lot, inside. That's where they wanted to land it. And they can, and they could. And if you read a later book, codename Angelique, I already spoke about it. That's where use of gliders in counter-terrorism. They use the same method by putting forward looking rockets which they engage. They have forward pressure, therefore the aircraft stop right there and you just boom, slam down. That was amazing thinking. There was a time when the US military was actually way ahead, where they had the best weapons, as Trump still seems to think. And they were innovative. They had all these plans. They were fantastic. But things went wrong. In the last 20, 30 years, things went badly wrong. That's why I keep on warning. And individually, you will still find very good operators with them. But as units, not really. Not really. But anyway, so they stop it like this, and now they have to fetch these people. They have to load them. They have to get them out. And then they have to fly another mission. I'm not going to describe entirely all the events and what happened here. I don't want to spoil the book for you. But that's basically what they do. And the second part of the mission is they found out somewhere that there's a US military team, or whether it's SEALs or whatever, it doesn't matter, all the same. Low standards, very low standards. They're going to come in and they're going to raid the place. They want to, I don't know why, probably because they think there's some kind of terrorist there. Now, you have to understand one thing. The US does not have any intelligence in Sub-Saharan Africa. They think they do, because they bribe the right people. I explained that technique to you in other books and videos where I said, we know which generals and politicians have children studying in the US. Yeah, we know. And we know they got assistance to get the visas and, a bit of financial assistance, things like that. So we know who works for you. Really, you should think of another plan. We also know that most of the richest Africans will make sure that their wife actually gives birth in California somewhere. In fact, it's such a joke that half of the rich Chinese uh, families are probably more than half, 90%. Also make sure that their children are actually born in the US because they're entitled to a US passport. That's why they're doing it. Yeah, they're abusing you, but nothing will happen. I mean, it's California, man. You don't need to show an ID or anything before you vote. I mean, as long as you vote Democrat, which is what we call the Democrats in my book, Demo rats. I don't like that. But there's no real difference between the Republicans and the Democrat Party. Same. So I say in many books where I put out together what they are actually the same on, you will find out it doesn't matter who you vote for. There's alien control in the US. It's not Israel, by the way. Everybody blames the Jews. Yeah, they're good scapegoats. They make it easy to be blamed. But no, all roads leads to Rome. Read Codename Masamune 26, or you can also read Oath of Evil. It's repeated there. And you will find out how the Jesuits actually created the US. If I use that word created, I don't use it without reason. They created that country to become the second beast. Can I prove it? Yeah, go and read the books, man. Go and see. I mean, look at the other evidence, the satanic symbols, the secret handshakes, the fact that all your presidents are bowing down to Rome, the fact that basically all of them are Freemasons, very high ranking. Who controls the Freemasons? Yeah, we know these things. It's with great sadness that we witness it, and also with great joy. Very great joy, because when we know the end is coming, and so is the second coming, and now there won't be a rapture with some people left behind. No, no. Jesus will arrive. Those who's already dead will rise. Those who are in him, the rest won't. And those who are still alive, Paul said, will change in an instant. Get your new body. Body, yes, won't be a spirit. Body. And you'll go up to heaven for 1,000 years, and the earth will be left desolate with nothing except Satan himself, or Lucifer. He will be around, but he's tied down. He can do nothing. Everyone here is dead. That's what the Bible says, guys. I don't care what your pastor says or your dominee says, the ones who actually said to us that apartheid was biblical. It wasn't. It wasn't. All God's children, it wasn't biblical. So she goes on this mission where they all arrive, and now they've got naval support. There's a South African frigate around. There's a South African strike craft around. Now, a lot of you will say to me, of course, those ships, Look in the books, they're still operating. Whether they have a lack of funding today, they're still better than anything else in Africa. And it's like I said to you when we spoke about Codename Ghost and the submarines, the Type 209s, and I revealed a lot of things which shocked a lot of people, as I saw from the letters which I got. The admirals are telling a different story from what you're reading on TikTok or seeing on TikTok or YouTube or what's that other horrible place called? Facebook. Oh yeah, Facebook. By the way, James is not on Facebook. We got banned. We got banned because I have a problem with the murder of General Soleimani, the Iranian general, which was drowned together with our senior Iraqi officials while he was on a peace mission on his way to meet the Iraqi Prime Minister. The US, under the influence of Israel, decided to drown the guy because, Iran is just bad. Yeah, but the funny thing is, if you go and look at the US State Department and the other websites, CIA, whatever, and you look at the terrorism supporting nations, Iran's not there. Nah, we're not there. But every one of you will tell me, oh, we're a great supporter of terrorism. No, we're not. No, we're not. You're lying. It's not true. In fact, they're a Shia nation. They're against Al Qaeda. They're against ISIS. This guy, General Soleimani, was actually fighting with, and he was very successful. And yet, the Americans then go and kill him. Murder. It's murder. There's no state of war. In fact, you go and murder him in a neutral country, or a country which at least is friendly towards you, Iraq, which you control. Then later on, of course, yeah, let me not go into this. I wrote books about it, but that's why Facebook went banned to something like 125,000 different sites, pages, because they felt that you shouldn't say such things. Don't tell the truth. No. You know, Big Brother is watching, you know. Don't do that. Don't do that. You know, that's fascism, by the way. If you read the books, you will find out that fascism is where big corporates like Facebook, others as well, of course, including YouTube, Google, whatever, where they take hands with state. In other words, they make sure that big business and state is now together. They're holding hands. And then these big companies start doing things on behalf of the state, which the state cannot do. Because in the US, you have a fairly good freedom of speech. Yes, you can go and stand on the corner of, in the market square, and you can shout these things, but you cannot shout it on YouTube or on Facebook. So in other words, they limit you. And why do they get away with that? Because, they're a private company. You're using their platform at their rules, which changes every 5 minutes, and it always changes towards a Democrat side. It's very weird. It's just like conservatism is sort of not welcome anymore. But even that is part of the Hegelian dialectic. Really, you should read Oath of Evil and the rest of the books. Read Codename GSSP 40, which is a book I wrote in honor of my mom, who's passed now. There I explain to you what is a Hegelian dialectic, and that is why you see Trump now with his conservatism and Christian faith, which ain't even Christian to be honest, because it follows Rome, is taking over. It is a swing of a pendulum. First you had the far left. Left is the side of Obama and those idiots. And then there came the counter-reaction with Trump. Then there came the other one again with Biden. And then suddenly you got going this way again. That's all biblical prophecies playing out. It's fantastic to witness. I really love doing it. But anyway, so we found out that this US military unit, whatever they are, wants to beach. They want to actually come to the beach or come from their submarine or their ship or whatever. They come out and they're going to now snatch somebody. So they're going to storm a village or something. They're going to kill a lot of innocents, like they always do. And then they're going to grab this guy and take it out. Now, Angelique wants to prove a point. And the point is basically, this is my theater. This is my theater of operation. If you want to do it, you come and speak to me. And if you don't do it, I might ambush you, I might betray you. You think she won't do it? South Africa is a BRICS country, mate. It's not a NATO country. Yeah, we will definitely do it. And if you suffer losses, yeah, well, tough, man. That's what the books are about. It's warnings, which I still have to see a single Western analyst to actually even know about. And yet do you realize that about 80% of the jihadis are actually now found in Sub-Saharan Africa? Huh? That's not me saying it. This is said by researchers, and it's true. Because when they started fleeing from Pakistan and the Middle East, where do you think they went? They went to Sub-Saharan Africa where they ran into our networks. We picked them up. I remember in 2005, and it is in some of the books, and we'll get to them. We picked up the first wave. We started seeing in a place like Mozambique, there were suddenly a whole bunch of mosques. Go and the code name Wednesday 7, where we speak about these things. And that's how we picked them up first. There were too many mosques. We were not a Muslim revival going on in a Catholic country. But yet they were there. And I can tell you, imams who went there in the first wave is probably the best operators I've seen in my life. Because they are such humble people. They would sit there under the tree. Man, they poor. They don't have money. But they sit there and they share what they have and they play with their beads, which is a Catholic thing, by the way. It's the same religion. Yeah. Go read Oath of Evil, other books as well. Even this one, Wednesday 7. You'll definitely find out it's the same religion. That's where it comes from. And so, they would integrate themselves in the community. And they were holding pattern. In other words, they were waiting for something. And we asked permission to start investigating, and we got permission, and we started investigating, and we started infiltrating, and we started finding out that they are actually, all of them are Sunni Muslims. Saudi. Yeah, Saudi. Pakistan. Places like that. In other words, not Iran. Isn't that strange? All these major terrorist organizations from the jihadis are all Sunni. None of them are Shia. But yet you have a problem with Iran. Unless you're playing some kind of Hegelian dialectic here and you're setting the Jews up to be wiped out, which is my personal belief, I fail to understand it. It makes no sense. You should be natural enemies of Saudi and the ones supporting the actual terrorism, yet you're not. And you should be friends with your enemy, which is Iran. That is the logical thing. But it ain't. But the things I'm saying to you will probably shock the hell out of you because you don't know these things, and I wouldn't be surprised if this video is removed from YouTube. Remember, it's also on Rumble. It's also on Odyssey. It is there as well for this very reason. But if you read my books, you will find out very quickly what's going on with this. So anyway, you don't just attack a place in Africa like you want to. In fact, it's an act of war. If you try that scenario, let's say you want to land a team of special forces in, say, KwaZulu-Natal area or wherever, and you want to go and snatch somebody, and you did try already, we chased you away with firm warnings. It's an act of war, you know. It's an act of war. A war can break out between the countries. Now, of course, your attitude is, man, we don't care. We America, you know. What did Biden say? Man, we America. We can fight everywhere. We can fight China. We can fight Russia. We can at the same time. No, you can't. Man, you're a joke. There's no way in the world you can do it. You don't have industry based anymore. And you certainly don't have a men on the arms. Even the Indian army, which I rate quite highly, is got about 1.5 million people. Your army is about 458,000. Oh, shame. You're writing checks which you just can't cash anymore. You might get away with this with small countries, but even the Yemenis has defeated you. It's not nice for us to see these things, guys. You know, it saddens me greatly. It saddens me. But the fact is, if they know about this ambush coming in, and perhaps you should read also Codename 1 Alpha, which is a book which explains to you the link between white slavery, that's human trafficking, and jihadi terrorism. Yes, there's a huge link between those two groups. But you can read that book because they also simulate a Western Special Forces team running on the run in KwaZulu-Natal. And then they try to catch these people, see what will happen. And of course, well, read the books, you won't get far. So we know the normal doctrine as well. What will happen is you will come out of the waves. Then you will move inland. Then if you're ambushed or you feel that the mission is betrayed, this happened in Somalia, by the way, you will just withdraw back. I give 100% credit to that commander who did that in Somalia. That Navy SEAL commander who actually said we betrayed let's go back to a submarine or wherever the hell we came from. Brilliant, brilliant. You should never carry on with a special forces operation if you are betrayed. We saw what happened in Angola when one of our teams got and 3 died, I believe. 1 got captured because they were betrayed. Not from ab initio, like the commander is saying, with respect. I don't think he's correct. The generals, anyway, say he's talking nonsense. But the fact is, once you have that feeling that you are betrayed, turn around, go back, you can come back tomorrow. There's no shame in that. There is shame to carry on when you know you're betrayed and you're being stupid, because that's when people die. So Angelique actually wants to ambush this group. She wants to wipe them out. And it would have been one of those, well, some terrorists got hold of him and killed him. But in fact, these were not terrorists ambushing them. These were special forces in the book anyway. In the real life, in the training scenario, yeah, it follows very much the same pattern. And we know, because we studied you and you know nothing about us, but we know your standard procedure is once that happens, you're going to withdraw back in the water. Now, in this book, in the first version, the first manuscript, it was never published. I actually reveal what would be waiting for you in that water. And that would be your damn end. There's no way you're going to survive that. You're dead. That's what we want. We want you to go back in the water. You go back in the water, you're dead. But I was asked by those who read the books, the manuscript, to remove that. And so I did. I'm not going to explain it further. Figure it out. It's not hard. Why did I use that specific method? Because we found some papers which explained that method to us. Your enemies are aware of it. They know how to do it. But of course, they need to know where you're going to land and when. And then they need to ambush you. And that's why it hasn't happened yet. But it might in the future. Anyway, that's a book. Thank you for listening thus far. Spread the word if you wish. This is a book. It's available on Amazon. It's on audio. It's available in hardcover, like this one. See, quite nice. Hardcover, softcover, as well as Kindle. It will not be on Apple. I'm not explaining that again. I'm sure many of you are just rolling your eyes, man. You keep repeating yourself. But again, I am. I might be repeating myself. But guys, really, I don't know who's watching here. I don't even know when. You might be watching here 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I don't know. So I have to say these things. It's just courtesy to the new people who's also welcome. So that's the story. I hope you will enjoy reading it. It's a funny book. It's a great book to read. There's a lot of things happening in the background. And I think the lesson in this book is not so sure how to ambush the Navy SEAL team, because that's not that hard. But to understand that somebody like Angelique, they will not stop. In other words, even if she knows the aircraft is defective, and she knew the brakes wouldn't work as designed. She knew it when she started that thing up. She will still carry out the mission. She will not do what the US Marine pilots did during Operational Eagle Claw, where a warning light comes on in a helicopter and they decide to abandon the mission. Yeah, that's what happened. The warning light came on and they just turned around because they felt the risk is too high. There wasn't enough helicopters left. The entire plane was scrapped. Then the one helicopter at the refueling base slammed into the C-130. Those two then exploded. Lots of people, I think, died. May they rest in peace. And then the great run started. In fact, the Marine pilots ran away so quickly that they left the helicopters. I think it was the Sikorsky Sea Kings. They left them idling. They couldn't even switch them off. They ran that quickly. And the Iranians didn't even know they were there. And remember, the Iranians were actually at that stage the total US Air Force under the Shah. And they found these helicopters and they just put them into service the next day. Man, if you never heard of destroying your equipment before you leave, do you have to run that quickly away? That's why Charlie Beckwith, the colonel who actually started Delta, that's why he called you cowards. He was forced to say afterwards, he's sorry, I will not say that. I will not. And guess what else? Let me give you some other news about Iran. And I'm not an Iranian spy or under the influence or anything like that. I'm just giving you facts. Do you know that the greatest F-14 Tomcat pilot, Ace, fighter Ace, you know he's not US. Do you know that? Huh? He's Iranian. The Brigadier General in the Iranian Air Force. Yes, during the Iraq war, you supported Saddam Hussein. And Israel, of all people, supported the Iranians. Yeah? Do you know that the Iranian Air Force actually attacked the Iraq nuclear plant a few months before the Israeli Air Force did so? Do you know that? No, probably not. No. Those things are not known in the West. If you didn't know it, perhaps you should read my books. There's always a lot of things which comes out there. So the top ace for the F-14 is not American. It is actually it's an Iranian pilot. He's dead now. He's deceased. Okay. God bless, guys. Hope to see you soon again. Let me go and do some work. And hope you have a wonderful day further.